Hi all, this is Allmighty and welcome to this video. Once again, I'm going to show you a game between the third World Chess Champion and the fourth World Chess Champion. This time, Alekhine is the one with the white pieces and Capablanca is one with the black pieces. We are still at the 1914 St Petersburg Chess Tournament. This is, I think, round 5, and Capablanca has very nice results, of course, as it usually was at that time. May I remind you, it was a very strong tournament. So Alekhine, Capablanca, Tarrasch, Lasker, Rubinstein, Bernstein, Marshall. So the top of the beginning of the 20th century for the chess world. And this one is once again an interesting one. It will be a game, as you all know. Alekhine starts off with e4, which means that Capablanca will answer at e5. We will have a nice Ruy Lopez, this time the Steinitz defense. Still, Capablanca isn't going into any complications with the Morphy defense, a6. He is still very attracted to his Steinitz defense, where he can keep the equal game up until the middle game, and then he can take over in the middle game and especially in the end game. Nothing much more to say. Alekhine and Capablanca were considered to be friends at that time. Capablanca even showed a couple of lines to Alekhine and gave him a few advice because he was a little bit older than him, a little bit more experienced. And Alekhine was, I would say, they would say, a nice person at that time, not up until 1930s, when the rivalry began and when the World Championship match between them began. So yeah, let me just show you this game. We have, as I've said, knight to f3, knight to c6, and after this, the Ruy Lopez, bishop to b5. d6, as I said, the old Steinitz defense, and now d4 immediately. So breaking the center by Alekhine, pawn captures on d4, knight captures on d4, bishop to d7, unpinning and protecting the knight on c6, and we have a knight to c3, knight to f6 and castles, bishop to e7, normal development, and knight to f5. And knight to f5 isn't a move that is usually played, so here in this position, you can, I don't know, capture on c6, you can play rook to e1, you can play bishop to f4, yeah, you can even go b3. So a lot of ideas here for white to continue with the development, and knight to f5 isn't a move that is usually played. And here, white, of course, is attacking this pawn, so if you want to defend it, probably you would have to go castle, but still, you don't want to give up the dark square bishop, because then bishop to g5, and very nasty ideas in the pin of this knight. So here, bishop to f5 was played, a correct idea, pawn captures on f5, and now castles. Rook to e1, attacking the bishop, and now knight to d7. And yeah, a strange idea by Capablanca, because it quite simply allows knight jump to d5. And since you're already given up the light square bishop, now your dark square bishop is in danger also. Bishop to f6, of course, not giving up the bishop, c3, and now knight to b6, attacking this knight. Of course, Alekhine will capture the bishop, knight captures bishop, queen captures on f6, and here in this situation, I was expecting Alekhine to play something like queen to c2 or even queen to f3, just simply defending the pawn. Of course, queen to c2 a much better move. It doesn't run into knight to e5, but he decided to play bishop to c6. He decided to give up the bishop pair. So already a strange decision by Alekhine. Capablanca, of course, captured, and he gave up essentially a very nice bishop pair, which he could have easily hold off to probably until the end game. But as I said, Alekhine is still inexperienced, and he plays moves such as bishop to c6. So it isn't a bad move, it doesn't ruin his chances here, but still, a bishop pair is a bishop pair. Queen to f3, defending the pawn and also attacking on c6, and rook to e8. Of course, queen cannot capture on c6 because rook to e1 is checkmate, so you have to play something like bishop to e3. c5, defending the pawn like this, and rook to e2. Alekhine wants to double up. Rook to e5. Here, Capablanca wants to double up as well. Notice that the knight is guarding the rook, so this is possible. Rook to e1 and rook from a to e8. Queen to b7, and this is actually where it all started. At the moment, this position is considered to be equal. You don't want to go for this pawn because it's a double pawn, and you will you will leave the e file and all the ideas that come with it. This bishop on e3 is now very much a pin piece, and you're preparing something like knight to c4 or even knight to d5 in some variations, and then you want to pressure this bishop even more. It is a much more valuable idea than going simply for the f5 pawn. But Alekhine is the first one who starts the fun, and he plays queen to b7. A very active and a very courageous move, which goes for the pawns on the queen side, and at the same time he leaves the defenses of the bishop and rook and these two rooks in the center and on the king side. And Capablanca will easily show why you shouldn't be afraid of a move such as queen to b7, and we'll see it in a couple of moves. Queen captures on f5 first, so picking up the pawn, because Alekhine will also pick up the pawn, and he chooses to pick up the one on c7. Now he is attacking on d6 and also on a7. Queen to e6, now having this rook queen rook battery, so now this bishop can definitely not move anywhere, and we have queen captures on a7, attacking the knight. Knight to d5, and you see the whole point now. Capablanca did give up an extra pawn, but now he is threatening to capture on e3, and if he wants he can definitely bring the pawn back, but this would be a very low price for the price of giving up these two pawns. Actually, the main idea for black here is knight to f4, and then you cannot capture because you will lose the exchange. You would have to move the rook or something, and then the knight to g2 could be a very nice idea, sacrificing this knight. So here the best idea probably is to play g3, stop knight to f4, but then you have f5 with the idea on f4. White has to play queen to b7, and after f4 you have bishop to d2, rook captures, queen captures on d5 with check, queen to e6, queen captures, rook captures, bishop to f4, and after d5 you would have an endgame where black is up the exchange, but he is down 2 pawns. And after this you can play c4 to lock your pawns on the light squares, because white has a dark square bishop, and then you should go for these passed pawns. And this would be a general idea. Black is considered to be better here, and this would definitely go in Capablanca's favor, since he was considered to be the endgame master. But after knight to d5, instead of g3 we saw king to f1, and now this allows knight to f4. You could capture, and after rook captures play bishop back to e3, but after a rook to e1, king to e1, you're once again up the exchange, and with a very active a rook and queen who are on the attack. So here, instead of capturing, we saw a rook moved to d2, and this is actually where Capablanca missed a nice chance to go for this idea, queen to c4 check. And now if you block with the rook, then same ideas with, for example, knight captures on e2, rook captures on e2, rook to d5, threatening checkmate, so king to e1 and queen to d3, once again threatening checkmate, queen to b1 is a threat, a lot of threats that cannot be handled here by white. Of course, you cannot even play this because queen to d2 and the bishop is pinned. So after queen to c4 you can play king to g1, but now this runs into knight to g2, and if you capture, then rook to g5 check, bishop has to capture, queen to g4 check, king to f1, queen to h3, king to g1, and rook to e1 is checkmate. So a forced checkmate. So here queen to c4 was a very nice move, but okay, Capablanca probably saw it but couldn't calculate all the variations here, so instead he sacrificed the knight immediately on g2. And here Alekhine captured, not fearing for the consequences, and we saw queen to g4 check, king to f1, queen to h3 check, king to e2. Now the king can go to e2 because there is no queen to c4 here. But now rook captures, pawn captures, queen captures, king to d1 and queen to e1 check, king to c2, and as you can see, Capablanca didn't gain a lot of material advantage here. Instead, it was a pretty forced variations where he goes out with a pawn, and simply a better game, a better endgame, because this king is in a worse position than this king, and Capablanca can still continue with the checks. So he does queen to e4 check, and now king to b3. A better move was king to c1, it is much safer, but once again Capablanca misses a chance to play a move such as c4 to force the king forward, and then continue with the attack with queen to c6 and the rook. So he missed the chance to play c4. Instead, he played queen to c6 immediately. But this allows a4 being played by Alekhine, and now d5. So limiting the movement of the king here. A5, Alekhine decides to go for the pawn push, because this is actually his only threat in the game. But of course, queen to b5 check, king to a3, and now rook to b8. The threat is to give checkmate here, so king has to go to a2, and after this h6. And h6 is a move that needs to be made so that the king can go to h7, so there is no back rank ideas, and now you can actually include the rook into the game through e8, e1. a6 was played by Alekhine. I mean, this is the worst idea because it leads to his downfall immediately, but it's not like he can actually go and make something out of this position, whatever he plays. It is really hard to tackle this idea of rook to e8, rook to e1. So Capablanca does that. First he plays queen to b3 check, and actually it was in this position where Alekhine resigned the game. Because, as I mentioned, king to b1 needs to be played and rook to e8. And how can you stop rook to e1? You have to play rook to c2, rook to e1 check, rook to c1, and now rook back to e2. Now queen to b2 is a major threat that can only be stopped with queen to b8, but this is something you don't want to do. You are giving up a queen, and then you can defend rook to c2, but it doesn't make sense to play this on. Black is up a queen and clearly winning the game. So Capablanca shows once again that you shouldn't mess with him. If you are going to win a pawn or 2 pawns, you should definitely be sure of yourself that you know what you're doing. So once again Capablanca makes Alekhine suffer. Their mutual result is pretty bad for Alekhine at the moment, but as I said, Capablanca is older and more experienced than Alekhine at this point. That being said, I would say, this is pretty much it for this video. I would like to thank you for watching it, and I will see you next time.